Mikel's literally locked the dressing room, players only. And it's like I'm taking control of this whole space. But it was like he was the manager there in that moment. Arsene was outside waiting for us to train. We were not out there because Mikel stopped training. That's how strong of a character he was. That even Arsene was afraid of him.
But where's your ambition? Because a couple of years not winning something is one thing. The best part of nearly a decade for an ambitious wonder kid that's, being heralded as
referencing the wonder kid, which I didn't call him.
And as a 35-year-old man, when you look back at it, did it play out the way you thought it would?
Never been asked that question, Simon.
This is Up Front with me, Simon Jordan. I believe there are a lot of vacuous, uninformed, unchallenged opinions out there. I want to get to the bottom line and cut through the nonsense. So on this podcast with William Hill, I'm going to get people with strong views who think they can stand them up under proper scrutiny. There's a good chance I might learn something along the way, but more importantly, so might you. Joining me in today's episode, a teenage wonder kid born out of the Southampton Academy. He landed at Arsenal before being thrust into the national consciousness, picked for England at a World Cup all before his 17th birthday. England's youngest international, he hit a century of goals over a decade in North London, winning 2 FA Cups along the way. Theo Walcott, welcome to Up Front. Now, you might want to dispute that 2 FA Cups because somewhere along the line I've heard it's 3.
Okay, yeah, so it is 3 because I've got 3 at home, so no one's going to take those away from me. But yeah, I was injured my ACL for one of them. It was the famous 2-0, which a lot of the Arsenal fans are quite happy with. Okay,
so the fact that you played in the 3rd round of the FA Cup doesn't give you the 3rd FA Cup, does it?
It does for me because it's sitting in the office.
Okay.
And I've shown the kids, and is that a medal?
Right.
I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
So for them, that's what me.
Fair enough.
Play a part. That's what I was saying.
So we're sat here in the presidential suite overlooking the financial district of Frankfurt, which is quite an interesting little city.
Yeah.
In these podcasts, Theo, what we try to do is establish a little bit about the background of how, when and why, and how you became the person that you are. Was it always football for you?
No, it really wasn't. I started very late. I started at 10. Was never really interested in football, to be honest. I didn't really watch it. My first memory of football was probably the Michael Owen goal, 98.
Okay.
Liverpool fan at the time. My old man was a Liverpool fan, so I thought Michael Owen. So I sort of put them both together. But I was not interested. I was athletics, 100 metres, 200 metres.
Right.
And that's what I was focused to do. But I did sort of county level briefly, and then I realised my running style compared to the county style was all over the place. Didn't really focus on that. And then I started to actually enjoy football because of one of my friends actually was going to play a football match at the time and needed an extra body. So I came along with my shoes on, and I scored a perfect hat-trick at the time, and then I've kind of liked football after that, to be honest.
What was your parents' involvement?
Parents involvement, so my old man, he would literally be ferrying me, you know what it's like, ferrying, your children up and down the motorway to Southampton every, sort of once or twice a week. And my mum was a midwife, so she was always out of hours, like at times you wouldn't really see her because it would be at night, that sort of was quite a stressful job for her. But yeah, no, my old man was literally gone through a lot of cars back blowing up in the day, and the cars weren't as good as they are now.
Pushy father?
Pushy father, not at all. No, I hadn't had a pushy. The thing about my development from when I came through at 16, I was a decision maker, so I'd always make decisions, and I've continued to do that up until this point, which is probably a little bit unusual now because I feel like at times parents, because I do my grassroots level, my son, and then when you're on the sideline, you see some of the parents pushing their children to be certain stars because they're their next Jude or they're their next Theo Walcott, whatever they want to be. That's always the worry for me, is having a pushy parent. So the great thing about my parents is they sat back, they let me make decisions. The people around me as well, again, maybe, make the decisions. And it worked out for me. Like I say, you make mistakes along the way, but you learn from those as well.
Of course.
But yeah, like I say, it's because it's your career. So I feel like it's important to do what you want to do and be yourself and be you.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, you're guided by people that have some experience. But one of the things that, obviously there's this wonder kid label that gets stuck to you and gets stuck to a lot of the younger players. And we'll dig into that a little bit deeper during the course of this conversation. But I want to read you a quote from one of your former coaches to talk specifically about you and your awareness of yourself, because you instantaneously seems quite self-aware. He said, "There's absolutely no chance that Theo Walcott will ever be distracted from the gift he's been given. He knows he's a lucky guy and he'll make the most of what he has." The gift that he refers to, I'm assuming, must be ability and pace. When did you realise yourself that you had this quote-unquote gift?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was probably when I was 15 playing reserves, playing against. I'm not the biggest person in the world.
No.
But at 15, I was very small. But playing against.
Diminutive.
There we go, thank you. Yeah. And playing against people like Linvold Primus for Portsmouth, he was double my size. And it was when I actually experienced playing in the men's game as a kid. Essentially, I was a kid. And I look at the sort of the English setup and the people now, and the people say about young players and kids, they're like mid-20s who've actually had a experience in a league. I just didn't. I was literally 15, reserves, straight into first team at 16 for Saints. And it's a lot for my little eyes to crack on with. But to be honest, when you play football, you express yourself anyway in sort of ways. I wasn't the biggest talker. I wasn't the biggest leader. I was just quiet, get on with the job. And then when it comes to the actual football side of it, just do your attributes. That's all I knew. And it worked for me. I had people around me like, I remember Nigel Quasi was very good around me at the time because he really sort of looked after me. Dennis Wise as well, which I've had some very interesting moments with Dennis Wise after the pitch of this. I was on the bus on the way to, it might have been Preston away, one of my first sort of games, and he asked me to make cups of teas.
He asked you to make him a cup of tea?
Make the squad a cup of tea on a moving bus down whatever road I was on. I didn't know how to make bloody cups of teas at 15, which is mad. It's just,
you didn't know how to make
I did not. I just thought maybe put the tea bags in the kettle. That's how it was not clear, right? So I said to him,
put the tea bags in the kettle?
Yes.
Okay.
I was 15.
Okay.
And so I never made a cup of tea in my life.
Okay.
And I said no. And then he sort of gave me like the death stare, and then went back to his seat. And then what happened later on, my old man got a call from the club saying, your son's refused to make cups of teas. And he says, is he there to make cups of teas or is he there to play football? What do you want him to do? You tell me. I want to play football. Okay, well, he's there to play football then. After that moment, I think because I've had a good game and, the talk was getting a bit high about me, Dennis was a different person around me. He was like, okay, we'll look after this kid.
Right.
Which was interesting because I had a weeks later, as a kid, you're playing with the ball at your feet. I was in the sort of the reserve area, kicking the ball against these sort of advertising boards. Missed the advertising boards, smashed the glass behind. Who comes out with glass in their leg? Dennis bloody Wise. Come out.
That's his full name, is it? Yeah.
No, but he came out, and I never forget it because he just looked like
thunder,
and maybe worse. And he just screamed and shouted, "Who did all this?" And I just put my hand up, like, "Sorry, Dennis, mate." And he's like, "Don't worry, Theo, don't worry about it." So it's like someone's pulled Dennis, said, "Don't."
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I'd seen that story, and I know Dennis. I nearly took him to Palace back in the day, and for reasons best known to me, I decided not to take Napoleon to Palace. But he's a character, Dennis.
Yeah.
The academy that was being produced at Southampton at the time was throwing out some not insignificant players. You were coming to the fore, Oxlade-Chamberlain, obviously at a later stage, Gareth Bell, but it was being revered as a very significant academy. And I had one at Palace where we'd thrown out Wayne Routledge, Ben Watson, Victor Moses was coming through, Wilfried Zaha was coming through, Nathaniel Klein was coming through. And I'm very interested to see, you going into that academy and what the experiences were like there. Because I had this really big thing about the academy, about players being produced in a way that was conducive to being professional footballers and understanding the school of hard knocks and understanding that it was very difficult to be a professional footballer, not preparing them to be jugglers, preparing them to be ready for the business of the opportunity of professional football. What was Southampton's academy like? Because it was being pictured as the sort of the poster boy for how an academy should produce young players.
Yeah, it was, but they've sort of gone away from that, and it's interesting now when I've gone back to the club a few times, they're starting to bring in old faces because they want to get an idea and a sense of what was it like. We were producing all these players, why are we not doing it now? I don't think it's Southampton, I think it's quite generic around the
youth development, full stop.
I do think it's that, and that's why we've sort of taken players from abroad and stuff. But going back to Southampton, for me, they had a system where all the players were like being in a sort of a training camp consistently together. I was 15 staying on a Sunday night, going back on a sort of a Monday night. So I was sort of influencing it was called The Lodge at the time. Jules was looking after it. Lovely, lovely woman. I still keep in touch with her now as well. And I shared a room with Gareth Bale. We had Nathan Dyer, Matt Mills, Martin Craney, Leon Best, Dexter Blackstock, Dave McGoldrick, all these guys that have gone on to have some good careers.
Good careers, yeah.
Andrew Sermon, there's all these guys, and it's very interesting having, when you see the United teams who have had a structure and been together for so long, so many of them made it and successful. It's very similar in that sense. They want a group of players. It's quite a while ago. But it was getting a sense of getting a group of players together that actually just enjoy being in the same space, but also enjoying playing. And because it was playing, we had fun. And that's the thing. Fun can be taken out of the academies now. When I look at players, they're playing into a system that the manager wants. So who's up here, but you're down in the academy, you want to develop yourself. So now you are losing all your attributes, all your strengths. What I liked about them, they saw what you had, they hindered that, but also they let you express yourself a lot more. I think now, because the manager's changed consistently,
right,
you're getting players that would want to play to a system, but that manager's moved on. Now you need to play to system. So you're overcomplicating for these young players coming through. They're not actually finding themselves. They're playing to a system of how to play. And I think that's how I believe that's why players don't come through as much
Did you
anymore.
have the first team manager quite a lot involved in the academy? Because it was always, I was going to say, I used to force the first team managers to pay attention to the academy.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a good thing for them to do.
So one thing, when I went to Southampton, I was shown the lights, the grand lights of Chelsea. I was 10.
Right.
I went as a ball boy, and I went behind the scenes. It was Liverpool, and got to pictures of all the players at 10 years old. This is when going back to just starting football as well, and academy at that age, when I've only played football for 4 or 5 months, didn't really understand it, thinking, goodness me, this is too much for me. And I went to, and then Southampton wanted to look at me off the back of a Newbury, it was a Jersey tournament actually. And they just showed me all the academy side of it, showed me the Dell, but that's about it. Didn't go anything about first team, because for me, that's the goal, but I don't need to be distracted from that because I'm working towards that. And that's what they did as well. They didn't show you all the first team side of it. And I think now it's very accessible now with the social media side of it, where players and sort of parents going back to that side of it can see all this glam where you can put highlights and clips and make your kid into a great star.
Yeah.
Instead of actually doing the hard work, where first team just separate it. It's enough. You're not going to be there for many, many years. Mine was developed very quickly, 16, but that was out of my choice. I've just got on with football, and then people would, like you say, go back to wonder kid. I didn't label myself as a wonder kid.
No.
I was just a kid enjoying football that it got thrust into a mad world.
You talked about systems and kids being introduced, and not so much force-fed, but directed into a system of play. Do you think that in some way takes away the individual thinking of a player, that subsequently brings out a kind of player that we're watching now that's not able to at times think for themselves?
I think as well, you can, as footballers, it's very interesting because you're sheltered in a world. It's very interesting when you come out of it, how you see things very differently, of course, because you're in like a little bubble where people making your breakfast, people making your lunch, people making your dinners. You're not actually people doing your... I've seen tax bills and car registrations, all this stuff just left in the dressing room like it's going to be dealt with by someone else. And it's actually now teaching these players not to mollycoddle them,
Put some character into them.
Exactly, to be robust when it comes to the actual real world, after football particularly. Yeah. Why not do that when they're still playing football? And I always find it quite frustrating when it comes on the outside of it, how difficult it is to get to the players. Like, even if to say hello, or if a kid wants to say hello, they're ignored or they've got headphones. And don't get me wrong, some can be in the zone, but we're all people, and at times these little kids, and they look up to you for that one moment. If you look at them all, actually acknowledge them.
I think that's fundamentally right. Yeah, but I remember about the character of players, and you talk about it as mollycoddling and everything being done and the backsides being wiped, and I kind of agree. I remember years ago with Steve Bruce when he first started managing for me at Palace, and we wanted, not because I wanted the kids to do it because I wanted to save some money. I wanted the kids to clean the gyms and the academy, not because I wanted character. I wanted resilience. I wanted respect. Yeah. And it was kind of something, no, not doing that. And the PFA would come down and get involved. And it makes me feel that kind of attitude builds a sense of entitlement in young players too early, and they don't realise what the real world is like. And when they get out into the real world, post their careers, obviously in the world that you're now in, it's a bit of a shock for them because they've been institutionalised for years.
I clean Cameron Jones's boots.
Right.
And he was sitting on the bench at Southampton, and I was still cleaning his boots.
Yeah.
And I remember when he said, "Today you don't need to clean your boots." I said, "No, I need to clean your boots. It's my job. It's my responsibility to look after your boots." He said, "I've not played in them this weekend because you played ahead of me.
Yeah.
I'm still going to clean your boots because that's my job. I'm still an academy player, but in the first team, so my job's never changed. I wouldn't, because I'm first team, I'm not just going to leave the boots. He can do it. That wasn't my character. I was always responsible in the fact that, no, I'm going to look after you because you've looked after me up until this point. I'm now ahead of you, but look, that was my job. Yeah. And that's one thing I don't think they do anymore. I don't think they clean boots.
They don't, no.
I see some first team guys still clean boots because it's sort of...
Yeah, it's a set of standards, it's a discipline, it's a respect culture, and there's not enough of it. You get given your debut by Harry Redknapp. I mean, how big a deal was that for you? I mean, it's very early, you're very young, we all know that, and constantly, every time I talk to someone, I said, I'm going to go and speak to Theo Walcott, and Souness is going, what, young Theo Walcott? Everyone speaks to you in that respect, because ultimately you're still sitting there as a pretty young man now. What was that like, getting called up into the first team? I mean, was it something that was on your radar? Was it a shock? Was it something that pushed your eyes back for a second, or were you just going, okay, this is a natural progression for me?
Yeah, that actually. It wasn't really a shock because it was more, I started to hear the conversations on the outside from the FA Youth Cup run. Harry, I remember him pulling me. This was actually after the Wolves game. I actually forgot to put on my shirt. I was nervous, but I just wanted to get on the pitch. I was hungry just to get on the pitch, just to show what I could do, really. And like I said, I didn't really overthink it. I think one thing, especially when you're young and you're fearless, you don't overthink things. Yes, you can make mistakes, of course you can, but you don't overcomplicate it. And I think...
You also don't know what you don't know, do you?
Exactly, and you're going into a space where people don't know what he's like. So because of all the chat as well, people would be either want to get tight to letting you know, basically back then in the Championship, let's still do it, letting you know that you're in a game. But because I was so fearless and quick, I'll just get back up. Don't let people see you hurt, just get on with it. It just eventually just sort of built them down, these sort of defenders I played against. And I remember Harry, when I actually made my full debut against Leeds, he pulled me. He'd never told your team before. Never really tell your team. He said, Theo, I want you to call your dad. I'm going to be starting you. And I'm like, kind of like, hitting myself now. I'm starting tomorrow Leeds away at Ellen Road. He said, you have to call your dad. He's got to be there. So I thought, what a nice sort of gesture that was at the time, because managers don't do that. They don't come and pull a player before and say, and look at the bigger picture, like how, going back to the hard yards of the parents taking you up and down, how much it meant to, because he's been in that position with Jamie, of course, and everything. I'm sure he has.
Well, he'd also been very much on the front foot with Frank, hadn't he? Frank Lampard, when ultimately all that pressure at West Ham was built and Frank had to sit in front of that press conference and Harry had to explain. So he's quite good at that, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he's exceptional because like he looks at the person as well, which I feel it's really important. Absolutely. So always look at the player. There's a person in there. He's the original, exactly, yeah. He really is.
There's a lot of hype that gets built around you very quickly. And I'm trying to work my way through it. You've got Wisey, who can be sometimes quite unpleasant, being very pleasant to you when you've broken a window and it's Theo, okay, fine, go away and do what you want. But there's also a lot of background noise building about you with a limited amount of appearances. You've 8 appearances for Southampton. You've got, a series of games for the youth set of England in the 17s and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of noise. And I remember writing an article in 2005, and the subject matter was you. Right. And it was about this situation where Rupert, I think, was complaining about the potential of you being moved away because I don't think you had a pro contract at the time. You were on a scholarship, were you?
Yeah.
I had a similar situation with John Bostock, where you're coming through into the academy, you're getting into the first team, and everyone's going, wow, there's a young kid in our team. But the background noise with you seems to be really quite loud instantaneously. But you make your first team starting lineup debut in October, and your agent's already out in the media talking about he's an ambitious lad. He's very flattered to potentially be speaking to or be spoke about in terms of clubs like Arsenal or Liverpool. And that seemed to me to be a very strange set of circumstances to be happening so quickly for a 16-year-old kid that's very early in his career, only just started to get into a championship side. Why is this happening?
I didn't really know much about it, to be honest. Why does it happen? I think, for me, that side of it, I was never really sort of understood that side because all I knew was the football side of it. So I'd do my job.
But you said earlier on a moment ago that you were very clear as to what you wanted, and very confident in yourself. and kind of made your decisions for yourself. So are you involved in this process, or is it happening around you?
No, so it's happening around me. All of a sudden you're going up and up and up and up, and there's no one around. I'm not someone who's going to have my parents look after me in that sense of understand how football clubs work. I don't have a clue. I just want to play football. I don't quite care about that, to be honest. And when you hear teams like Liverpool, as a Liverpool fan, and you hear teams like Arsenal, Chelsea, all these players all these teams, again, it's going back to you need someone to take care of that side. I'll take care of the football side of it, but that side I don't want anything to do with. You deal with that, and then I will make decisions. Simple as that. Very quickly,
this comes from, Theo's an ambitious lad, and would welcome the interest of clubs to Theo's leaving Southampton and on his way, and it feels. I mean, I remember again not comparing you to John Bostock because your career went that way and John's went that way, because he went to Tottenham far too early. Was there ever a thought process before you made the decision to join a club like Arsenal that I should perhaps learn my trade and understand what's going on in the football world? Because there was likely to be a perception. I remember saying, again, to Bostock, you're going to go to Tottenham, you're not going to get in the first team. You'd be better off learning first team football rather than going into the stiffs for a period of time and learning nothing. Was that never part of your thought process?
My thought process, because again, going back into the sense of I played football very young. Well, so not very young, late, 10. Yeah. Michael Owen, idol. And then Thierry Henry broke into scene. I'm 16 and all of a sudden I get a chance to be around my idol, play with him.
Henry,
right. That is. I'm going to jump on that. You ask any kid right now, at 15, 16, you get a chance to go, you could play with your idol. You're going to say yes. And, Liverpool, Man United, again, it can be quite a lot. And then all of a sudden, Arsenal, I don't look at Arsenal, I look at Henry. That was my thought. I saw Henry and I thought, yeah.
But when you're going to Arsenal and you're choosing Arsenal, one of the main conversations surely has to be not about who you want to play with, who you're going to play for. Arsene Wenger. I mean, Jack Wilshere. I mean, I did one of these with Jack, who spoke to me about Wenger and his various characteristics, and I'm very interested to hear. I met him in 2000 and bought a couple of players for him. Obviously, he's very professorial, very calm.
I saw him yesterday, actually.
The game yesterday. You saw him yesterday, did you?
Yeah, still calm.
When you look back at Wenger, for you, I mean, what were the qualities that you experienced? What was Wenger's attributes?
So Wenger's attributes, for me, he was someone who would always have time for people. Be it on and off the field, he wasn't confrontational at all. You wouldn't, be an incident where the players are trying to sort of have a heated discussion, should we just say. He would just stay out of it because that's nothing to do with him. But he would never say no to a conversation. But the thing about Arsene was very smart. When you speak to him and go in there with a certain question or a certain for instance, for example, what do I need to do in the team? You go and see him, you would ask a question, you come out and think, has my question been answered? I think it has, but in a different sort of way than I expected. Again, he was always a calm presence, but like all his teams were very calm up until a point when, just before he's leaving, it started to get a bit sort of erratic. But that's where maybe, Arsene started to lose what he was good at. And for me, like, I can't thank him enough for actually giving me the opportunity to be.
Is calm good? I mean, I think
I'd say calm's good.
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, serenity and calmness is a good thing because it gives balance, but does it concentrate the mind? I mean, I read something about he dislikes confrontation and avoids confrontation to some extent, and you've just sort of alluded to that. And instances where players had altercations he would step away from. I mean, would you have liked to see, well, I'm not asking you to criticise Wenger, I'm just giving understanding of perspective. Would you like to see a bit more edge from him?
Do you know, there was one time, this actually might even be out there already, it was Liverpool away. And it was the one time I actually seen Arsène come in and literally go mad. It was definitely Liverpool away. It was the one time I thought that was definitely out of character.
What was he losing about?
I mean, just the discipline, the way we played, not the Arsenal way. It was literally gone away from the sort of philosophy of what he's built, what Arsenal is. And when you go off track from the way Arsene and Arsenal play, he was never happy with it.
Did you sign for Arsenal specifically because you felt you had an opportunity to win things?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did. I really did.
Was it surprising? Was it a tad...
Yeah, we didn't win much.
Well, you didn't, no, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But was it, when you come through the door, all of a sudden, very quickly, whether it's in the January transfer window when you arrive or in the summer of that season, 2006, you're seeing some of the mainstays of Arsenal depart. You're seeing Bergkamp leave, Pires leave, Campbell leave, Cole leave, Lauren leave, and all these players have played significant roles in the achievements of the past, the significant achievements. Does that at any time make you think, am I part of a regeneration? Is there an even bigger opportunity for me? Or is it slightly, all of these big players are going, what's happening here?
I mean, you need to generate a new structure of a team at some point, and maybe the players that come in weren't at the level they're not going to be instantly Ashley Coles and Sol Campbells. That's not what you're asking. But for me, I still believe that Arsenal could win something. I think at some point it started to change the sort of thought process of top four was a trophy. That's probably the sort of finances come involved a lot more. But
because
as players,
of the move to the stadium as well.
Potentially as well. But that started to be a trophy. And even now, up to this day, people would rather be in top four than actually win the FA Cup.
Are you in that camp?
No, I'd rather win an FA Cup. I just...
Premier League maybe better.
Oh, yeah, well, so, sorry, but I still want FA Cup. So of course, I would like to win the Premier League. Everyone would like to win the Premier League, of course that. But for me, again, now I look back, there's not many opportunities when you actually play in finals. When I look back on my career of the amount that I've played, and I've played in a handful, not loads. And when you look back and you see the little medals or you see the trophies, the achievements, one thing I would say to any player as well coming through, enjoy those moments because they go so quickly. I think at times players can go away from, right, move on to the next game, concentrate on the next game. No, enjoy that space now and then move on.
You must have been disappointed though when Henry left, because obviously one of the big things you signed for is the fact that Henry is in situ, and 18 months after you sign, he's gone. I mean, that must have been a bit of a disappointment for you.
Yeah, I took his number.
I was going to say, because I mean, I can't. I'm going to.
No, so that story, I didn't. It was funny because
you must have known you were taking his number, because it seems to be this illusion that you're trying to create.
Well, I wanted number 8. No, but I did want number 8.
Right.
And the reason why I wanted number 8 again was like, back then it was like 1 to 11 were the starters. Honestly, so it was like 1 to 11 were the starters. I have number 8. Hopefully they give me number 8. We were signing Nasri at the time. Vic Hague said, you can't have that. I said, all right, I'll have 14. He's like, yeah, 14 Omri's. Yeah, I'll just have that. It's fine. You do know it's Omri's? Yeah. I'll have his shirt. It's for me. Now it's just a shirt, but I've got Omri's shirt and I understand what it means. Of course I do. People have worn that since, no problem. I didn't think too much of it because again, for me.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, he's your hero. I mean, he's an iconic footballer. He's the...
No, more on the fact that Vic said you do understand it's Omri's. Yes, I do understand it's Omri's number. I'm just going to get on with it.
Right.
I didn't want to overthink it.
Didn't weigh on you?
No.
I mean, they're tipping you as an ex-Henry. And
again, that's people saying things
but
all the kids
you've got ears, haven't you? Pressure is created. Are you just impervious to that sort of stuff? It doesn't come into your mindset of what people say about being a wonder kid, about taking Henry's shirt and the pressure that goes with it, and the expectation of you and you're the next Henry. None of that resonates with you or causes any concern for you or makes you think about what you're doing.
No.
In a fashion where it slightly unnerves you or creates some feeling of anxiety about it all.
I think as well, like I say, as players, if, for instance, you've had a bad game, so I don't need other people to comment on it, or if they do, that's fine, they can, of course they can, but I don't need to go and find those comments.
No.
So for me, yes, people be comparing me to Henry. Yeah, I don't need to go find that to sort of make me feel more anxious about things, because the more sort of negative or positive, whatever it is, it's always going to hinder you in some way. So I didn't want to distract myself from that side, because I knew I'd focus on what I knew best was actually just playing football.
When you joined Arsenal in 2006, this is it's in part a winning machine, isn't it? It's a club that's become acclimatised to winning things. It's gone through a season 18 months ago that no one's ever been able to emulate. But you mentioned a moment ago about top 4 becoming a trophy. I mean, I'm being unkind here, almost a participation medal. And you come in between 2006 and 2014 and don't win anything. When did you notice or the change of culture inside a club that you're signing for, that you think you're going to win things, to the seasons ticking by, and you're not winning anything.
But we were making top 4, and that was the mindset. It was literally embedded in us now.
But by whom?
By the actual players and the club itself. Look, top 4 for me was.
But that was the goal. That's not a winning mentality, though, is it?
Well, you sort of look at teams now like United and people like that. People bite your hand off. You're in the.
Oh, now, but
like, I hear your point. But for me, like I say, people and teams, particularly now, want to be in top 4, and we were probably the starting of that pattern. We probably were that pattern of every team now wanting to be this Arsenal.
But in part, okay, that's assumed knowledge now. That's hindsight, looking at the reality of what people now consider. At that time, winning was winning, and your mindset seems to be that was something that we now got now, and everyone, I'll bite your arm off for being in the top 4. But back then, that was a change in the culture of Arsenal, and I'm curious to see how that sits with you. You're very young still, and it's important to understand that even at that stage, when you win your first FA Cup in 2014, you're still only 24.
Wow.
But where's your ambition? Because you don't seem to be overly bothered about having a move or moving on to other clubs that might be successful, that give you an outcome that might involve you winning something, because a couple of years not winning something is one thing. The best part of nearly a decade for an ambitious wonder kid that's, being heralded as if...
in the wonder kid, which I didn't call him.
No, I know you didn't,
yeah.
But all of those things resonate around you. Why didn't you look for a move somewhere else? Was that a lack of ambition, a lack of opportunity?
I'd say it's the character I am. So going into football late, I was a person as a kid who liked to sort of be in the distance, quiet. Now I live out in the country. I don't really want to be bothered particularly at times because of the sort of the pressures leading up to this point now. And for me, I just enjoyed playing. I just enjoyed playing football for Arsenal, a club I loved, eventually loved even more than I did with Henry. And I essentially just wanted to play football. It's one reason why I've sort of stopped playing football now. But when people say you're 34, 35, you start, I started so early. And I just lost the love of playing. Right. And I think I really loved playing football for us, particularly at that time, and then Everton, Southampton. But Arsenal particularly were the best moments for me playing-wise, because I just loved football. And now when I see players playing for their clubs and I see that they really care and they love playing, you have some players don't win anything their whole careers at all. And they've really good
but some
players.
Players don't sign for Arsenal.
Well, it's a different Arsenal now.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different Arsenal now. And that's maybe where, for instance, you look at Arteta, who joined Arsenal at the time, when we're going through a new transition of not winning anything. What's the mindset? What's the responsibility of the sort of the players? And it was like they were, because I always used to see Mikel would always see Arsène. He would always talk to him. And it was like he was getting moulded to be the next Arsène. Not just easy to say it now, but like moulded to be, not just saying for Arsenal's manager, but to be very high in that sort of establishment. And it was like, now I look at it and I think Mikel's changed that whole sort of dynamic of what it was like for people just really enjoying playing football, making top four was happy, because that's essentially what the group was. We're happy playing football, playing some nice football, entertaining, getting top four. Again, the switch in mindset of the Invincibles moved to that. And then you can get in a pattern where you join that or you move on. I stayed in it. And I was okay with that. I didn't know people to say you need to be ambitious and go, I don't really, quite frankly, that's fine. People can have that opinion, but I was happy playing and enjoying that space. So that's for one reason why I didn't leave.
That's an interesting perspective, because, I mean, ultimately, what's your perspective? I mean, it's not for me to question it, but I want to dig into the culture of Arsenal, because, I grew up, watching Arsenal play. I'm a lot older than you, but
not that much older, right?
I'm a fair bit older, mate. But thank you. I'll take them where I can get them. But I watched Arsenal change over the years, and I had an interesting relationship with David Dein. I always admired his complete and utter Arsenalness, and this culture of Arsenal being the sort of Bank of England club, but also a club that had a very strong attitude towards winning, and then changing that culture and seeing it manifest itself on the pitch. And and a particular embodiment of that was someone like Mesut Özil. And obviously he was signed in 2013. Directly after that, you win the FA Cup in 2014. And I'm very curious to see what your view on is with Wenger. And I'm going to use Özil as a hook on this conversation, and you'll see where I'm going with it in a second. I mean, Wenger talked about the change of attitude towards him, and towards the end of his tenure, the sort of brutality and hostility that he was the victim of.
As in Arsène or Mesut?
As in Arsène.
All right, okay.
And I'm going to go back to Mesut and say, when I looked at players like Mesut Özil, who seemed to be a thorn in his paw because he was responsible for the lucrative nature of Mesut Özil's contract. And I remember watching you guys in 2017 play against my old team Palace when Sam Allardyce had just gone in there. And you were awful. You got beat 3-0 at Selhurst Park, and it just seemed to embody the culture of Arsenal, and Mesut Özil was the sort of indicator of that in terms of lackadaisical, disinterested, unengaged, participating in a game because he had to. And I'm trying to get a flavour of, A, is that the wrong way to look at Mesut Özil and that particular individual? And B, Wenger and this hostility that he describes, and how much responsibility you players take for that.
Yeah, no, I hear your point, of course. I mean, you sign Özil from Real Madrid. All of a sudden, yes, it puts even Arsenal, even though on the map even more so. We've now signed a player where, like going back to we're not won anything for a period of time. Signed this player has won multiple things. And his whole demeanour, Mesut's, he was so relaxed to this point of, at times, you actually think, is there anything going on up there? You generally did.
Right.
No, honestly, even off the field. But for me, yeah, he was a gifted player, but the Premier League's, you've seen a lot of players come from abroad who are slightly older, who have struggled in the Premier League. I'm not saying Mesut's struggled, but there's certain moments in certain games where you don't play Mesut Özil, you don't play that type of player in a certain game. Mesut Özil was someone that would make things happen, but on his terms.
Mm-hmm.
And training the same. You want to be in this five-a-side team, you would, only when you have the ball.
Right.
When you haven't got the ball, you have an issue. And those games, particularly at the Selhurst Parks, of course, Big Sam, we all know how that's going to be. Rough up these sort of players, they're not going to be interested. And he was one of those players in those sort of times would not be interested. And that's nothing against, that just wasn't his player. Just wasn't his player. And that's when you go back to Arsene. Look, I regard Arsene as one of the best managers. I've obviously worked with him for a long time. But as a manager, when I sit back now and I look, even like with Gareth, and I look at certain things, you've got to sometimes make that big decision.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to sometimes be that person that's going to do what everyone's thinking at times. But when you don't do it, that's when you get questioned. And maybe certain times Arsene will probably, and he'll probably admit to this as well, that could have protected those or protected himself or taken him off in certain situations, not even played him. But that's probably the point when Arsene, it's probably, a year before he was leaving, where you start to see a little bit of cracks, potentially. That maybe the love of the game was fading away in the manager's sense, and he wanted to move on to something different. It's a bit like, for instance, me, I could still play now. Of course I could still play. But if I'm not going to be loving playing, I'm not going to do myself any favours, I'm not going to do the club I'm doing favours, or the fans. That's not fair. So why do that? Come out of that space. So maybe Arsene stayed on for too long. And maybe there's a little bit of similarity in the fact that, for me, Arsenal, I wanted to leave. I left, 2018,
mm-hmm.
I think. And Arsene left the same year, I think.
You wanted to leave Arsenal?
Me?
You wanted to leave Arsenal?
Yeah, I did
Why?
Want to leave. I wanted to leave Arsenal because I wanted just something different, change of scenery. I just wanted to change the scene. I was there for
11 years.
11, 12 years. And for me, it was just, I just want something different in life now to see what else was out there. And a Big Sam, I was a big admirer of him anyway, and he called me up and I was really wanted to go work with Big Sam. He reminded me of Harry a little bit, and I thought, you know what, I'd love to actually have the opportunity to sort of play with you in a different. I mean, it's Arsene Wenger and Sam. They're completely different
polar opposites, aren't they?
Yes.
Did you players ever question Wenger?
No.
Never.
No, I wouldn't ever question Wenger in a never would do that. I'd go see him individually and question myself to him on certain things. I would never do it as an open team thing. No.
Do you think that's an unhealthy thing to do with a manager?
I think, as in like challenging a manager at times?
There's a way to challenge managers, isn't it? You don't have to be disrespectful. No. You can put your point of view across by having an alternate point of view and seeing if the manager can embrace that. I mean, is it something that you think is the wrong thing to do? To challenge a manager? It's not challenging a manager's authority. We're not asking you we're not asking you to do a Roy Keane in
No.
Sapon.
You won't play again.
Yeah.
Look, I think it was difficult because the structure of the club was changing dramatically, and I think Arsène really knew that. To go and approach the manager and actually take on that responsibility, like, no, it's on us, was difficult for the players, because Arsène would always protect the players. Because Arsène, I mean, when I think of Arsenal now, you think of Arsène. I still do to this day, and that still will be with a lot of people. And I think that's the sad truth of when you see how it ended with the fans and just how it was, the Emirates itself, which was at times incredible. You look at it now compared to what it was like. Don't get me wrong, it was an incredible place to play. I'm not disregarding that. But if you go there now, it's just a different level.
Yeah.
And it's like we've now reconnected. And I felt at times Arsène and the players disconnected a little bit.
Arteta is the conduit for the reconnection, isn't he? I mean, I went a couple of times last year to see Arsenal, and I was, once upon a time it was described as a library. And now it's nothing like that at all. The atmosphere is fervent. It's almost, feral at times and febrile. Arteta has done things quite differently to Wenger. You've alluded to the fact, with only very isolated instances, that predominantly Wenger would steer away from confrontation. I like managers that are prepared to have confrontation, not as their stable diet, but have it in their locker if it needs to be there, so people get their minds concentrated relatively quickly and know where their place on the food chain is. But Arteta seems to have steered into that because of his scenario with Aubameyang, which I thought was absolutely right. I thought that that was a key determining factor on perhaps the reasons why Arteta was able to weather the storm clouds that were building around him and ultimately be backed by the balls.
Yeah, but as players, like for instance, when you see a player who's in your squad goes off and has a tattoo during a game or something like that, wasn't it? And other instances.
Yeah, and the manager doesn't deal with it.
It's you don't need those players around because they're going to influence the group. Yeah. And like I say, Mikel has definitely learned a lot from Arsène. He's got his qualities, but he's also got that other dark side, I think, which also helps.
Do you look at Arteta? Because I've had mixed emotions about him. When he first went there, I thought, I like you. I think you've got the chops for this. Then I thought, you're beginning to disappear up your own arse, and you sound like you're all theory and no substance. Right. And now I'm very much a convert to the fact that I loved the way he dealt with Aubameyang. I felt it was the right thing to do. I think it showed strength, decisiveness, and character and leadership. And some people will point to that as the turning points.
It's funny you say that, because the turning point, I remember my experience with Mikel when he was a player. And again, hindsight's a great thing, but I look at it now. The turning point for me was when we weren't making top 4 at the time. And Arsene's there. We have training in 30 minutes. Mikel's literally locked the dressing room, players only. And it's like I'm taking control of this whole space. I'm going to say how it is. It's an open room if anyone else wants to speak. I've always stuck with me. It was like he was the manager there in that moment. For me, that was a turning point thing. And I was like, this guy, he'd be a manager. I'd love to play with this guy. And then after that, I think we made top 4 that year, and it was that one particular speech. Arsène was outside waiting for us to train. We were not out there because Mikel stopped training. That's how strong of a character he was. That even Arsène was afraid of him. And going back to the confrontations.
What did he say there? What's he saying to you guys?
Basically, I think as well, he was he was sick of peace and quiet, being too nice. Going back to the calmness around this sort of group. And he wanted people to say truths a bit more. Actually, it's a safe environment. Mm-hmm. It's a safe space. It stays here. No one is not going anywhere unless any of you lot put it out there. And I think that moment, I mean, he did a lot of the talking, but there were certain players that you haven't heard speak. Suddenly, like, oh, goodness me, he sounds like that, does he? I don't really hear him speak. There was certain players that wouldn't want to say a word, but that moment, he gave that safe space for the players because we're all here to listen, because we all want the same goal. And he allowed that. Which
finished top 4?
At the time, yeah, because we were really struggling. And it worked. Look, so I think it's in creating that safe environment. I think Mikel's done that with the fans, a safe, supportive network. He's reconnected everything from obviously the documentary and everything as well, to actually get a real insight to things. There'll be things like people haven't seen, which is fine. But he's done that. And for me, the moment was that, which was back in, I think that was 2017, I think. So, yeah, I mean...
Do you think he'll be ultimately successful at Arsenal? Because ultimate success now is...
Not while Pep's there.
Really?
Well, someone asked me this the other day, and I always like to, give my honest sort of truth to beliefs. Look, I'm not going to be all Arsenal heavy. I'm not that sort of person. But, of course, I want Arsenal to be successful. Mikel will be successful. While Pep's there, it's the problem because he's so successful everywhere he goes. He's trained Mikel as well, as long as Arsène, and I just think Pep's involved in Man City. They will keep on winning things. As soon as he moves on, that's when that's when other teams will start to actually be able to win things. I think Mikel's in the right direction, of course.
Close though. I mean, a couple of cut games over Christmas, West Ham and Fulham, and I know people will make out the 2 games against Aston Villa. But that run over Christmas, I mean, you're 2 points behind Man City? Yeah, the margins are there, aren't they?
It's going to happen at some point. It's just while Pep's there, it's very difficult to beat him at the moment, and he knows that. And he's competitive, Mikel, so he's going to want to beat him while he's still there, not when he moves on. So he's hungry. So I hope he does. But like I say, going back to the thing, I think Pep will still win. I really do.
I just want to touch on your contractual situation with Arsenal during the time. Is it right in 2012 when you're reported to be negotiating a new deal that one of the conditions of it was that you wanted to play down the middle?
So I wanted to be given the opportunity to play down the middle. It wasn't actually in a contract itself. I just more had the conversation with me and Arsène of having the opportunity to play in that space. So it wasn't like it needs to be in the contract to play here. I wasn't that sort of person, no.
I mean, what is your best position? What did you think was your best position?
See, I would say my best position was the right. I played the most of it on there. But at times, I think, again, going back to knowing the sort of games you're against certain teams, I could adapt and play in certain positions. And it's going back to looking at managers, not just playing players because of their names or what they've done, actually looking at a system and thinking, where can I actually penetrate? Where can I utilise this certain attributes that's going to disrupt this other team? And that's going back to
when you play down the middle, you were very effective at times. I mean, I'm looking at a statistic here which talks about in the 38 appearances through the middle, you had 28 goal involvements, of which 20 were goals and 8 were assists. But you were never played there consistently. I mean, that's pretty stark, isn't it? I mean, what did you score? 84 goals in 420 games for Arsenal or something?
108.
108, including cup games.
Sorry, that's 100 for us. Yeah, it's in the board.
Fair enough.
That's written on the wall. I'm not taking that away from me.
I was looking at league games.
That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. I understand.
But when you're playing down the centre, you're prolific.
Yeah.
And yet you're not playing down.
We sound prolific. I was prolific in that.
Pretty prolific at
that year. Yeah. Look, like I wasn't the biggest person, but I knew where the space was. I knew when to make runs, and that was the frustrating things at times. People think like you play him up front. I was happy to be on the pitch any time. I really was.
Right.
I really was. I mean, like I say, but
even though you're making it part of the conversation in a contract, in terms of you're not making it a contractual obligation because it would be difficult to paper that.
So it's interesting.
But you're making it clear to the person, i.e. the manager, that this is where you would like to be given an opportunity to play.
After that as well, I did my knee. So I did my knee, in fact, the following year, I think back in 2014. Then I didn't really get a chance to play up front again after that. If we look back, I remember very clearly. I was different after that knee injury. It took a lot out of me.
Right.
And that was the hardest thing, coming back from that, because I was never quite the same. Still had the pace to some extent, but the fear of it going, even to this day now at times, if I have a feeling, it's like, it reminds me of that when I did it. And it's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice memory at all for me.
Right.
And I think that always stuck with me a bit when I was playing, always concerned that it might go again at some point. It's going back to, I love the athletics. You know, a sprinter needs to be at his best to perform. I had to be pretty much 100% really to be at my best.
Do you look back on your career? I'm going to say something you might think is pretty mean-spirited, but given that Arsenal's achievements when you were there for 11 years, it was 3 FA Cups, isn't a compelling total of trophies given what you walked into. I mean, there is a school of thought that you could be considered as the poster boy for a barren period in Arsenal.
Mean, isn't it?
It's a bit mean-spirited, but I'm going to put it to you.
You did say it.
Yeah, I did say it. Yeah, I sort of softened the blow before landing it.
Okay. I
mean, is there any fairness in that observation? Because do you look at your Arsenal time as a success?
I do. Like, I personally do, because again, it's going back to the amount of players that actually make it to any level is particularly hard in a sense. And for me to play for Arsène, to score 100 goals for them as well, and to play for England, for me, I enjoyed every minute. I was a success there without winning the Premier League. Yeah. But I wouldn't put it just down to myself. No, I never looked at it like that side of it. Is there moments where, yes, could have been better? You know, if you look back, of course, hindsight, of course it could be. But I don't dwell on that anymore, because I enjoyed that moment. And it's probably, from a sense, it's probably why I stopped so young. Because those moments I really enjoyed. And then, yes, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Everton. I really did. Goodison Park. I enjoyed Southampton, but there wasn't that I had at Arsenal. I still enjoyed it, but that's when I thought, no, I don't need to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think we'll start seeing players finishing earlier than they ever have done. You look at Eden Hazard, finishing younger than me, Gareth Bale. You have the players that when they get to a certain point, when they've been built up to a certain point, they just think, I don't need this anymore.
I'm going to move you on to England and your England career. I mean, you were called up in 2006, again for me, in a strange way. You don't play for Arsenal, it's first team that season, and yet you're called up for the England squad for the World Cup 2006, much to Jermaine Defoe's chagrin, I imagine.
Bentley as well, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Darren, as well, yeah. I mean, how does that manifest itself? You've got Wenger apparently lobbying for that, which is surprising to me. I thought Sven-Göran Eriksson was the manager, picking the players. But how do we get to a stage where a 16-year-old that's signed for Arsenal, that's played 21 games in the Championship, that hasn't played any Premier League games, is now in the England squad? I mean, what's that like for you? What's going on in your mind?
Surreal. It's. Do you know, it was scary. It really was. I remember when the squad got announced, and I was just sat in the living room, and similar space to this sort of thing. Not quite as nice as this, but like similar. And I remember the Sven coming to training, watching training, not thinking too much of it, to be honest, because I do remember, like, you know, him and Arsene had a good relationship. But then there was whispers of, I thought you might be in the 30, and I didn't really think too much of it. I really didn't, thinking, okay. I didn't want to dwell into that. I didn't want to sort of dive into that. And then when the squad got announced, I found out like everyone else as well. You get like the text or whatever, but like I was like, literally found out on the TV screens. And when it happened, it was like, I was shocked. I was shocked, but also scared at the same time. And I had to turn the TV off. I had to turn it off, and I ended up playing World Cup Monopoly, funny enough. And didn't really take it in. Didn't take it in until the next day when I go to the training ground, everyone's congratulating you being in being in the squad. Not really thinking what's going to happen now. I didn't really, with the wags and the paparazzi. The paparazzi was a sort of scary process. I mean, I was filming them all with my camcorder, which I've looked back on some of this footage, which is very interesting to see, because you see like a 17-year-old, I don't want to share too much actually with this, but like I'll show you a little snippet where any kid's dream is playing football. Like a lot of kids love to play football. Playing the World Cup for England is a dream. It is ultimately my dream has actually come to fruition. And then you see this 17-year-old kid, which I was, excited. The longer and longer the tournament goes on, it's interesting how, going about mental health and all this side of it, how that changes someone. And it'll be a very interesting watch, potentially at some point, we'll see. But yeah, that was when I look back at that side of it, it should never happen. I've said this. It should never have happened.
Is anybody saying to you at the time, maybe this is not the right move for you? Maybe this is too much too soon?
You try telling that to a kid who doesn't play for England. You've been picked to play in 23. Try to tell that to someone that you don't go, you shouldn't go, you're not going to go. Like, I just want to play football.
Try telling it, but ultimately...
I just wanted to play football. I didn't look at like I say, I turned TV off. I didn't want to look at the noises. Like, I didn't really communicate to the sort of media side. I never had media training or any of that side of it. So I've been sprung into this unaware and not really expecting what's going to happen. I really didn't. But again, like even the players that are around me were incredible. Ashley Cole particularly, because obviously I was at Arsenal, he's seen and soul. Them two particularly, they're like my big brothers. Like they're proper looking after me. But they didn't have to look after me when I actually was on the playing field. And that's probably where the respect I got a little bit more from the likes of your Gerrards, because Gerrard's even said, and I know that, I shouldn't have been there. But I got a little bit more respect when playing. That's a disappointing thing when you go away and you don't play. That's the hard bit. And that's when it's going back to me filming myself, seeing you like not playing. And yeah, that was a difficult space, because I look at this team now and your comparisons to Jude Bellingham is completely different. I don't.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Well,
that's why I keep on using the terminology wonder kid, because it's a hook into players like yourself, like Jude Bellingham, like Foden, and once upon a time like Wayne Rooney, and this build-up of expectation and awareness and thrusting you into the limelight and all the attention that goes on, and often in the British media, which is the British media's sometimes desire, build people up so they can whittle them down. I mean, you're about to say that it's different now. Were you going to say that?
I was. What's it different in your eyes? Do you see it differently?
Well, I wasn't party to it. So
no, but like on the outside, if you go on about me not playing for 7 months, and I compare Jude, for instance. So Jude, who's 21, 20, he has now experienced something that I didn't do, was playing at the highest level.
Yeah.
Playing at the highest level, now at Real Madrid, actually doing his thing. I, at 17, didn't experience that. I experienced it at some point, but not at 2021. And when I going back to the start of the pod, just in regards to comparing the younger player, when you talk about young players, they're mid-20s these days. They're not younger players.
No, absolutely.
And I think you have to, you don't have to agree, but like just the fact of, no, these are young men now. They're not young players. They're young men.
Sure.
In a man's game. That's how it works now. And I look at Jude and how he deals with the pressure of, the Real Madrid, and he's definitely got an aura around him. He's got a presence around him. We just have to, at times, maybe remember he's 20, and yes, because he's been there and he's done it already. I hadn't done it. I was developing to hopefully do it at some point, but not like Jude does. So those comparisons are very different for me. I believe.
I mean, talking about this team, Southgate was pretty much. I mean, you played for him once.
Yeah, played for him. A couple of times.
So he was the sort. He
was intern manager, wasn't he?
Yeah. But he was the last international manager that you played for.
Yes.
I mean, what was your? Did you get the impression that you weren't for him?
I got the impression that he was going to go away from and do something different.
Right.
I got the sense of, because obviously he's worked with the 21s, he likes the sort of younger, fresh.
He was going a different way.
He was going a different way, and I understood that. Yeah. I understood that. I really did. I felt, look, if that's where you're going to go, that's fine. Yeah. I feel like I still got something to offer, but when a manager has made a decision, it's hard to change that, and you've got to accept that as a player and move on. You really do. And it took me a while to move on. Don't get me wrong. Someone said you're not playing for England again, but then you got to try and work to get at it, and then you don't do it again, and you're bloody 3 caps away from 50. 50 is a nice mark. 47. Unless he wants to call me up for this tournament, I don't think I can do it now. But might have been able to do it last night. But against the fullback for Denmark. Yeah. But look, he wanted to go another way, and now he's got England to a. This is where we look at this team, and we're putting a lot of pressure on the team because the expectations changed of where they are, of what Gareth's done.
You should be under pressure.
Of course, you play for your country. I understand.
And you're big players with lots to say for yourselves, and you get all the benefits of playing for the best clubs. So I think there should be some pressure. Yeah. And you've been to World Cup semi-finals and European Championship finals and quarter-finals against the French, and all of them we've had opportunities to win.
Yeah.
So I think they're entitled to pressure. But Southgate, what's your takeaway? I mean, you had a brief experience with him. He went on a different direction. I think you're probably right in your assessment. If you're a 21s manager, the first thing you're going to do is bring the young players through because that's what you know. And ultimately, as an FA man, he will fit a certain model. Your overall takeaway about Southgate and what he's done over the period of time he's done it. Do you like it? Do you think he's been a good thing? Do you think he's a successful manager? And do you think they're going to win this European Championship?
I don't think they win the European Championship.
No.
I don't think they will. I just think it's really difficult when you come to home soil of Germans, particularly. I fancy them not even before balls kicked in the first game. I know they haven't been tested as much, but just something about the Germans I always feel like you've got to be fearful of. Spain as well, them too. I've enjoyed the fact that he's reconnected the fans in the certain tournaments. This one's starting to slightly go away from it.
I was going to say. Yeah.
But I would say the positive side of it would be he made some changes early on that people didn't really expect, and he's not done really. I just think maybe the certain personnel that should have been gone off in that certain game was wrong. Me personally, I just think it's going back to looking at the situation of who do you feel is going to get us on the ball, calm us down, and then stretch the team as well. And I just felt, I love Jude. I think he's brilliant, but he looked tired. I think it's a tournament football. He's going to play a lot. He's played a lot of football. I would like to see Jude maybe drop back and start carrying the ball from deep, maybe Declan at times. I think he can do it. I think he can. And I'd probably like to see Anthony Gordon. But use your squad, otherwise you're going to start getting little clicks on that bench, or you're not. I don't know what the
And Harry Kane might even fall into that category. So I imagine that Ollie Watkins and Ivan Toney are sitting there watching Kane in the first game thinking, maybe we should get a shout here.
Look, I think it's you need legs around Harry. You do need legs around Harry. You do. But they're not describing what Harry's done.
No, God, no. But it doesn't mean everyone is not beyond reproach. No one should be immune to a change.
No, but he made that big decision. He took off Harry.
He did.
And that was the one. And it's going to be interesting now. He's done the first step, which is always the hardest thing to do, doing the first time. So which then now you look at it, he will do it again and he will get it right.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to, that whole dynamic that's Gareth's tonight, he's done it. It's just, I think we're going to start seeing a different side the later the competition goes, because ultimately we want to win it. And then he's made that big shout of Harry Kane, taking Harry Kane out. The next one will be taking Jude out if he's quite like that. That's going to be interesting to see.
Last question for you. When you look back on, again, I use this over expression that you never use, but the media use.
That's fine.
Which is a wonder kid of 16-year-old, and the career that you've had, England, Arsenal, and Everton and Southampton, going back to where you started. And as a 35-year-old man, when you look back at it, did it play out the way you thought it would?
Never been asked that question, Simon. Do I think it played out? Ultimately, scoring over 100 goals for Arsenal Football Club, that not many players do. Yes, not winning Premier Leagues. An English young man winning FA Cup, which FA Cup means a lot to me personally. Look, it's a hard question to answer because you ultimately want to have all the lights, of course you do, but did it map out? Maybe it didn't map out as like the injuries that maybe deflected sort of certain sort of situations, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change anything. If I was going to change one thing, I'd probably change the World Cup side of things.
Yeah.
That's the
one thing. But you're happy with your lot?
I'm happy with my lot. And not many players play for Arsenal and score over 100 goals. I'm pleased with that.
And what next for you?
Next for me, hopefully be in that chair, interviewing you one day. We'll see.
Media boy, eh?
No, what's next for me? Look, I want to start actually, it's another side of it where I've missed a lot of my sort of children's lives as well in the football. You're thrown all over the place. And it's nice to actually now be involved in that side of it a lot more. But at some point, potentially as well, maybe coaching. But I just want to sort of enjoy being with my family, being with my young little ones, because I've missed out on a lot. And I think that's really important to me. with the sort of childhood I had, I think it's important for me to be around my kids as well a lot. But look, I enjoy watching football more than I'm playing than I played. But last night when I watched that game,
it wasn't enjoyable.
That love was a little bit there. Like, oh, I could play this game. But yeah, that's next for me.
Well done. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being so upfront with me. Upfront with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. For new weekly shows, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find audio episodes on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. 18 plus, please gamble responsibly.